Bryan Houston.
5 o'clock hour and a short work week, as the guy in Cy would say, or is it Cy or is it
Who's that?
Phil on Duck Dynasty that goes happy, happy, happy?
I don't know Duck Dynasty.
You've missed out on.
I'm not a real cartoon guy. The exception would be
cartoons.
Isn't Duck Dynasty?
No, it's a reality show. That's even worse.
Duck Dynasty?
Yes.
So this is like, what are they killing ducks? Is that the deal?
No, they make duck calls in Monroe, Louisiana.
It's a series?
It's a series.
That's a show?
It's a great show. It's a funny show. Well, let me rephrase.
Have you seen the Moonshine Show yet, by the way?
I have not. but I'm telling you, if you like the Moonshine Show, then there's no reason why you would not like Duck Dynasty.
Okay. I'll look it up on YouTube or something.
My life is very sad and pathetic, okay? That's all I'm going to say.
But you did good on that game.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Which was not sad and pathetic.
It was a good game.
It was a great game.
It was a great game.
Yes.
All right. There were some other pretty great games over the weekend. I mean, I love college football for this very reason. All hell breaks loose in the matter of about 8 hours and turns everything upside down. And so suddenly we go from one reality into a completely different reality, after the night's over, by midnight on Saturday night.
Sure.
And because this is Thanksgiving week and we're not going to have shows on Thursday and Friday because of the Cowboys game on Thursday and the LSU-Arkansas game on Friday, we're trying to squeeze some of our regular guests in a condensed week.
Sure.
So we have with us right now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com, our normal Friday Big 12 football insider on Monday, Kevin Lonnquist from Rattle and Hum Sports. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm good, Brian. Hey, you want me to needle you just a little bit about Friday?
Please.
I'll actually be up in Fayetteville for LSU.
Are you really going to go to the game?
Yes, my wife is a Razorback, and found out from a sister-in-law that we have tickets, so we will be sitting in there. I'm just going to be a spectator, if you will, but I will be in the building for that game.
Cool. I've never been to a game up at Fayetteville before. Have you?
I've actually been there several times. When you marry a Razorback, you are going to be introduced to that culture. But actually, I love Fayetteville. That is a really pretty country up there, and so I've seen the Razorbacks play, I don't know, maybe about a half a dozen times up there. So it should be a great atmosphere. Obviously, the Razorbacks are not going to go to a bowl game. There's a lot of rumors about John Gruden for that job now, and everything's sitting on their ear. So I guess we'll see what all happens. I know LSU still wants to try and get at least put itself in a position to win that game. And then try and get into the BCS at large situation there.
Could happen, yeah. They had a tough game against Ole Miss, so anything is possible this weekend. And Arkansas has made a living out of ruining LSU season in the past, so it certainly can happen. It certainly can happen. I got to ask you one other question before we get into Big 12 stuff. Now, you are a Big 10 guy by birth, right?
Correct, that's correct. Yeah, my father went to the University of Minnesota, and I think I might have shared this with you, but I kind of make it an annual tradition that I actually go up and watch the Gophers play. So I went to go watch them play a few weeks ago against Michigan for the Little Brown Jug, and so it's always good to go up there and reconnect with the Big Ten.
Well, I wanted to ask you what you think about the idea of Rutgers and Maryland in the Big Ten.
Well, Jim Delaney said at his press conference, on his teleconference this afternoon, that their goal was to try and market the conference to make it go a little bit east, since their flirtation with Notre Dame was over, and they'd obviously been they've been dancing with the Irish for at least 2 decades, if you will. And once the Irish had committed that they were going to go to the ACC, I think the Big Ten just decided that we've had enough of this, and we're just going to try and expand it. I think it really caught everyone by surprise when the story started breaking on Wednesday. I think at first, though, I wasn't really on board with them adding Maryland and Rutgers. Obviously, they will bring the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. markets down from Maryland, and of course, the New York City or the tri-state area as far as Rutgers is concerned. At least that's what they're hoping that it's going to generate. And they're both American accredited universities, which is something that the Big Ten conference presidents have always wanted to do. And I don't know if the conference is done yet, because there's a lot of rumors about them talking to Georgia Tech, trying to get into that market. And I think the reason for that is because really the Big Ten's problem, if you want to take it as a whole from a competitive standpoint, and why the Big Ten has been getting shellacked in a lot of these stand-up games, is because the Big Ten doesn't have the athleticism, especially on the defensive side. And I've noticed it a lot more from the linebacker situation, where they aren't getting the kids to make plays from that spot on the field, and why they're giving up 7-yard plays that turn into 17 or 27-yard plays. And I think that's really what's hurting the conference. And the Big Ten is a very stable conference. They are aggressive. They can wield the big stick regardless of how much they struggled on the field competitively. And with Jim Delaney and a host of solid presidents there, and when you have two, really, I'm going to make it actually 4 anchor schools there, but with Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, regardless of its situation, and Nebraska, that's a pretty good 4 to build your conference around.
Yeah, it really is. Well, I'm just curious about what you thought about that, because I don't see Maryland and Rutgers bringing a whole lot to the table as far as football is concerned. But
I don't either, Brian. I mean, I'm a little bit. I mean, like I said, my initial reaction to it was like, are they really going to do this? And again, it's more of a television and money grab from a competitive standpoint. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people. It wasn't the same thing that when Penn State came on board in 1993, and then when Nebraska came on board a couple of years ago. Those were better. Those were more natural geographical fits, and both those schools have fit in. Now, again, with the big, all bets are off in the way realignment is doing, because now obviously the ACC is going to have to try and figure something out as to, and it looks like Connecticut might be the big target there. But I don't know. We'll just have to see over time how well this fits in, because really, if you look at all these other schools that have gone conference hopping. Colorado and Utah, especially Colorado, that's been a disastrous move from a football standpoint for them. Missouri's been very meh this year in its debut season. TCU, I think that was kind of expected. I think a lot of people might have been shocked at how much West Virginia's really struggled in the Big 12. But as you and I have talked over the course of the weeks, that their struggles on defense are really where they're getting hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's shift gears now. We talked about this Friday. We saw Kansas State with our own eyes the week before. Nothing flashy, nothing special. Just kind of go out, do your job, win the ball game. And then we talked about the possibility, remote that it might have been, that Baylor could actually shock Kansas State. But then we went, nah.
Nah.
And then that's exactly what happened. Not only did they shock them, they beat the crap out of them.
Yeah, it was, I'm surprised at how much Baylor dominated, but there's a couple of things that worked against it, Brian. I think we talked about this on Friday, was that one, Kansas State was going to have to help them. What the Wildcats do, they turned it over 3 times.
Yep.
Number 2, they had a couple of players. I think I mentioned this on the show on Friday, the fact that Ty Zimmerman, one of their best defensive backs, and then Tyler Lockett, one of their star wide receivers, well, those guys wound up not playing, and that hurt too. And of course, as explosive as Baylor has been on offense all year, and say what you want about their defense, Baylor, when they can get on you pretty quickly, especially with the game at home, that can put a lot of teams in a team like Kansas State. If it gets well behind early, they're going to have a hard time coming back. And I think obviously that's what happened there. And that the Wildcats, when you're missing a player like Lockett, and then you have Colin Klein struggling the way he did, that it just was kind of it was just the perfect storm for the Bears, and good for them. I mean, you love to have BCS. I know from the Big 12 standpoint, it was probably the worst thing that could have happened, because they got a team knocked out, and actually their best chance knocked out of the national championship game. But that's the beauty of college football, is that you got to decide this thing all the way up to the first weekend in December, and the Wildcats didn't deliver. And now what we've got is that we've got a potential here, depending on what happens this weekend. You could have a 4-way tie for first place where tiebreakers could get into place before it's all said and done on December 1st.
Wow. Okay. Explain that one to me, for those who aren't following this that closely.
You would ask me that, wouldn't you?
Yes, I would, because I don't want to have to explain it.
Right. Well, I just opened up that can of worms, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, so the Wildcats, here they are. They're leading. So I'm just going to kind of give everyone a quick tutorial here.
Right.
Kansas State leads at 7-1. They got one more game left at home against Texas on December 1st.
Okay.
Well, Oklahoma's got 2 games left. They have Oklahoma State at home on Saturday. Then they travel to Fort Worth at TCU on December 1st.
Okay.
Then you have Texas and Oklahoma State, both at 5-2. The Longhorns, as we've mentioned, they've got TCU on Thanksgiving night, and then they'll go to Manhattan, as I just mentioned a moment ago. Then with Oklahoma State, mentioned again that they've got the Bedlam game with the Sooners on Saturday down in Norman, and then you've got then they've got to go to Waco to finish with Baylor on the 1st of December.
Right.
So here's what you've got. Okay, so let's just say that Texas wins out, beats TCU, and and finds a way to
Beat Kansas
win up
State.
in Manhattan. Wins up in Manhattan. They go to 7-2. Kansas State would drop to 7-2.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma State splits. They lose to Oklahoma State, but then they finish with the win at TCU. They're 7-2.
Okay.
Then you have Oklahoma State winning its last 2 games, mentioning that they pull off the upset at Norman, and then they go down to Waco and win there. So there's your 4-way tie for 7-2. And so, I mean, and again, every coach on the coach's call is every Monday, and all the coaches that are involved in this, were asked about this, and of course they gave you the stock answer of, well, our only priority is to take care of our practicing on Tuesday or getting ready to play Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, or like Mike Brown said, our only job is to get focused on TCU and make sure that we take care of business there so that we give ourselves a chance, and yada yada yada, which is what they should be saying, obviously.
Sure.
Because, you can't be looking ahead far enough. But it would be great drama if we had this, though, come 9 o'clock Saturday night on December 1st, and don't ask me how the tiebreakers would work just yet, because that's let's just let the games play out first, and then we'll see where we are.
I want to see DeLoss Dodds have to arm wrestle all the other ADs. That's how I think it ought to be settled. Just
exactly. It's going to be a lot of fun, though. I mean, over these next 2 weeks, and like I said, and the great thing, just getting back to Baylor for a second, the good thing for the Bears is that not only did they pull off this huge win that really turned the BCS upside down, and not to mention what Stanford did to Oregon,
mm-hmm.
but for the Bears, though, this really changed their stretch run, because they got a game at Cowboy Stadium on Saturday afternoon against Texas Tech, a reeling Texas Tech, and the Bears can absolutely win that game, and if they do, then they become bowl eligible. So there's a lot riding on this for the Bears, and I wouldn't put it past them that if they don't find a way to beat Tech, I certainly would give them a shot against Oklahoma State at home in the finale on December 1st. And that's a great thing for Art Briles, is that as much as his team has been maligned, they have been playing better defensively. And the one thing that Art's always done is that he's never panicked about anything and made any kind of panic moves. And everyone will say, and the coaches will say down there, that really their change started to come against Kansas. And, you can probably take that as lip service because Kansas doesn't throw the ball very well. But, they didn't play too bad against Oklahoma. They had a couple of big plays that worked against them, but they actually did a pretty decent job against the Sooners, and then obviously the result was what they did against Kansas State, especially with that goal line stand.
Yeah. All right, so let's look ahead to the games, and we can touch on what happened in the past weekend at the same time real quickly. We got Texas and TCU in Austin on Thursday night. How do you see that thing coming out?
Well, I would favor Texas. The good thing for TCU is that Stanley Mapanga, their star defensive end, came back for the Kansas State game and played very well, had a couple of sacks. I mean, it really had an impact in the game, and he should be ready to go, especially with about 10 days to rest. So that's a good thing for TCU. I'm sure they've spent another time. It's another 10 days too for Matthew Tucker, one of their running backs, who did run the ball better against Kansas State, but to get that high ankle sprain, more treatment on that and to stay off of it for a while. So that's probably some things that are going on there that are helping him. Blaise Foltz, one of their offensive linemen who had an ankle injury, he did play against Kansas State, but again, more rest for him. So I think TCU will be in better strength. The question is, how will Trevon Boykin bounce back from the terrible performance he had against Kansas State, where he made a lot of bad decisions, and he was facing a lot of Kansas State jerseys in his backfield every time he took the snap. So I think for him it's going to be a great maturation process. I would say that TCU has a chance to win this game, but really with the way Texas is playing, they played very, very well here over the last month. And it seemed like that the way they pulled that game out in Lawrence several weeks ago really seemed to give them a lift, and they haven't looked like the same team since. And I think the Longhorns should take care of business down there.
Okay, Baylor plays Texas Tech. You mentioned that on Saturday afternoon at Cowboy Stadium. What in the heck has happened to Texas Tech, and is Baylor going to beat Tech this weekend?
I'm going to answer that in reverse order. Yes, I think Baylor will win the game. Number two, I think what's happened to Texas Tech is that, as much as they struggled on defense last year, and the statistics will still show them as a team that's still ranked in the top 30 defensively, they just have not been tackling very well, Bryan, and they've really struggled as far as just making plays in space. And as I mentioned to you before, the two things where Tech's really struggled on is the fact that they don't force any turnovers and they're not getting any sacks. And so, and that was the same thing that happened against Oklahoma State on Saturday. You just don't give up 59 points to the Cowboys and expect to stay in it. They just had a lot of problems getting in space. And again, they played a far better part of this schedule now, and I think they're going to have some issues against Nick Florence and that talented Baylor offensive, or I should say that wide receiver core over there.
All right, and then the Oklahoma State-Oklahoma game, I know Landry Jones put up this record performance against West Virginia, but everybody puts up record performances against West Virginia, so I'm just not that impressed with that.
I know, and everybody else, and I think just about everyone who wears crimson and cream doesn't buy into it either. He just has been pretty much the punching bag by the Sooner fans up there, and Bob Stoops just about every week has to come out and defend Landry. I mean, the one thing that you got to give Landry credit for, though, is the fact that, and I think what frustrates me is when fans kind of discredit something like this, is that, Bryan, when you go on the road and win a conference game, it doesn't matter if it's in Lawrence or in Morgantown or in Austin. When you win which is what exactly West Virginia did, winning in Austin, but when you win on the road in conference play, regardless if it's, again, the worst team against the worst team or the best team, it's a good win because everyone's going to give you your best shot.
Sure.
So the way that Landry stayed composed in the final moments, especially when the Sooners gave up the lead, of course, and on fourth down, he makes his own check at the line of scrimmage and finds Kenny Stills for the game-winning touchdown pass. That's great composure by Landry. I mean, you got to give Landry at least his props for doing what he needed to do in order to pull that game out. And really, I think from his standpoint that it's a game that he needed. Again, the Sooners really needed it because of the fact that they were going to, probably watch their BCS at large berth disappear with that loss. But turning to Oklahoma State, I think the thing that really impresses it, really, I think maybe your coach of the year, although a lot of the talk will be with Bill Snyder, but I think it really has to. You really have to look at Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State. He's rotated three different guys at the quarterback spot with J.W. Walsh, Wes Lunt, and along with Clint Chelf, and those guys have each delivered and found a way to scrap out 7 wins, put this team back in a bowl game. Most likely it'll be the Alamo Bowl, regardless of what happens here. And I really like the job that he's done. It's just proof that Mike's a really good coach. He understands the quarterbacking position very, very well, and his kids buy into what he's preaching up there, and everyone knows their role, and they've handled it with such class that's why Oklahoma State's 7-3 and still in the conference race. It's
going to be a great setup of weekend games this weekend. Kevin, I hope you enjoy the LSU-Arkansas game. I hope for your sake that that it's a fun game, but I don't want the Hogs to win, okay?
I hear you. Like I said, I'm dealing with a sea of red in my neck of the woods up there, and so I'm just going to be as I told everyone when I've been asked, who are you going for, I just respond by saying, I'm just attending the game as a bystander.
Totally understand. Hey, man.
Bryan, have a great Thanksgiving, okay?
You too. Thank you very much for coming on early and on short notice like this. We appreciate it. And have a happy Thanksgiving, okay?
Thank you, sir. You too. All
right. Kevin Lonnquist from Rattle and Hum Sports on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM. We're going to take a time out. We'll come back, take some of your phone calls. We got the phone lines open right now, 903-509-TALK, 8255, 903-845-9993. Back in a moment.